Welcome to One Talk, brought to you by Sansum Diabetes Research Institute. I'm your host, Katie Hawk, and on this show, we discuss living with diabetes and bring in experts in the field to talk about topics related to type 1, type 2, prediabetes, and gestational diabetes. We do this to bring the diabetes community together as one. Be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. And in the comments below, let us know how we're doing. We want to hear from you. Thanks for watching. Welcome to this week's episode of One Talk. We are going to be talking about type 1 diabetes and pregnancy. Our guest this episode is Elise Cossart-Daly, and she's going to be talking about how to navigate type 1 diabetes and pregnancy and kind of what that looks like. So welcome to the show, Elise.
Thank you so much. Really nice to be here.
Thanks for being here. So can you tell us a little bit about what this pregnancy has looked like? This is Elise's second pregnancy with diabetes, and what this pregnancy has looked like.
Sure. So I think on a psychological level first, it's really been much less angsty than my first. It's really nice to be able to go through a pregnancy and know that you can do it, and to see the actual physical results of your, no pun intended, labor. My daughter is just beautiful and healthy. She's almost 2 years old, just really smart and strong and a beautiful little person. So it's very validating to have that as I'm going through this pregnancy. Sure. With baby sister, as we call her. But on a practical level, what it looks like is I wear a CGM. I have an insulin pump. I really closely monitor my blood sugars. I'm very careful about my food intake. I'm very thoughtful about my exercise. It's basically like type 1 diabetes, but to an Olympic degree. Sure. And so what I do is I meet with Dr. Kristen Castorino, who works here at SDRI, every single week. Sometimes I have phone meetings with her. Sometimes I meet with her in person. There are some weeks where my blood sugars are just doing their own thing, and so we talk multiple times in a week. Sure. And she has just been an incredible resource throughout the experience to help me to really keep my blood sugars in check. It's been really, some parts really intense hard work on my part, some parts really great support from my partner Brian and from my family and friends, some parts really hard work on the part of Kristen Castorino, just doing an amazing job helping me calibrate and regulate how much insulin I'm getting and giving me tips and tricks throughout the pregnancy, and then some part just like a gratefulness and a luck in the universe that it's been really been helpful in this process.
Sure.
Being a type 1 diabetic who is pregnant has its own challenges. When I was diagnosed when I was 2.5, I was told that I wouldn't be able to have biological children, and that is something that has stayed with me. And so I've really had to overcome that assumption or predisposition. But it's just like every choice that you make has a consequence, and as you're growing a fetus inside of you, every choice that you make can have an impact on that growing fetus. And so everything is high stakes. I found, at least in this pregnancy, at the end of pregnancy, it's been particularly challenging. I go to non-stress tests twice a week, which are actually quite stressful because you go in and you get an ultrasound to make sure that baby looks okay, to make sure that the fluid levels are sufficient, and then you get hooked up to 2 monitors and you sit in a chair for about 20 minutes, and sometimes you're there for an hour if baby doesn't do what she's supposed to do. And it's a little bit scary because you go in and there could be a possibility that you are sent on over to the hospital to get induced at any time if baby's not looking healthy or safe. So that's something that's been really challenging, and it's been hard in seeing doctors that don't specialize in type 1 and don't understand type 1 in pregnancy as well, because there's a presumption that a type 1 diabetic is not going to have a healthy pregnancy or produce a healthy baby. And that assumption simply isn't supported by the science or the data. With the type of technology that we currently have, it is absolutely possible. It is possible to carry your baby to a healthy term and to have a very healthy pregnancy with type 1. And so I've really found checking in with Dr. Kristen Castorino about what the science and data actually says to be really comforting for me, because then I have an affirmation. I understand what the risks are, but I have affirmation that yes, the science and data supports that you can have a healthy pregnancy. So that's been something that's been really wonderful.
Elise, thank you so much for tackling the emotional side of type 1 in pregnancy. On a logistical side, a lot of questions I always get asked about blood sugar range during pregnancy. What's normal, and what's a typical day like for you with your type 1 in pregnancy?
So it varies for each stage of pregnancy.
Sure.
So when you're first diagnosed, that's not the case. When you first become pregnant, you are very insulin sensitive. So what I did with Dr. Castorino is I dialed back my insulin drastically. And I had to be really careful because I didn't want to go low.
Sure.
Towards the middle of pregnancy, you have a little bit more wiggle room. And because your body is not as insulin sensitive and you're not quite as insulin resistant. And at the end here, you get very insulin resistant. So frankly, right now, I have my basal is about 53 units a day. Wow. And so when I'm bolusing for meals, I am bolusing for cucumbers. I am bolusing for that piece of lettuce that I'm going to eat. I often throw on like an extra 10 grams of carb because I'm like, you know what, we need a little buffer here. So it really varies, and you have to have a good team to help you kind of navigate those moving targets and navigate how your body's responding to pregnancy. But what it looks like now is I wake up, I pre-bolus for my breakfast. I try to come in around 90, 100 in the morning when I wake up in the morning. I give myself insulin between half an hour to an hour before I eat.
Okay.
I eat a lot of eggs. I eat a lot of vegetables. This baby gets a lot of veggies and a lot of protein. So I really focus on vegetables and protein. I focus on low carb fruits, so like raspberries or melon or grapefruit. And to be really honest, in the last couple of weeks, I have been so hungry for grains. I also have celiac disease, so I don't eat wheat, but I've been really hungry for grains. So I went into Dr. Castorino and I said, look, I'm really hungry. I am just really hungry right now.
Yeah.
And she said, that means we need to bump. And I was like, and I feel like I can't eat grains because my blood sugar bumps.
Right.
And she said, you know what, that means you need more insulin. And it's been so lovely because yesterday I had a half a sandwich and it felt amazing. On gluten-free bread, of course. But
that's great.
Yeah, so it's been really lovely to be able to be really honest about what my needs are and what I'm able to do. There was one point in the pregnancy where I was really hungry at bedtime and I was trying to deny myself a snack because my blood sugars were rising. And what I really wanted to eat was either coconut frozen yogurt, like ice cream, or granola. And I told Dr. Castorino that, and instead of shaming me about wanting to eat at that time or wanting to eat carbohydrates, she said, okay, let's get really good at those two things. Let's be very careful about how you measure your granola. How do you measure your coconut ice cream? How do you give yourself the right amount of insulin?
Yeah.
Your job is to become an expert in eating those things. And so it felt so good. I felt so validated.
Yeah.
And that really helped me because, you know, when you focus on what you can do and how to calibrate and basically make diabetes fit your life, it's so empowering and you're able to have such tighter control.
That's fantastic.
So in terms of my blood sugar range, what I run right now, I think my average is about 117, which I would love for it to be 100, but as Dr. Castrino said to me, you're not a robot. And then I have a very narrow standard deviation. So I don't bump very high and I don't go super low.
Sure.
So I run, if I'm going high, I'm about 150, 160, maybe 170. I was over 200 the other day, and that's okay. And there are times when you're over 200 and that's just what your body does.
Sure.
And it doesn't mean you're not going to have a healthy baby. So you are, like, being a type 1 diabetic in pregnancy, you are a human person. You need to strive for good control and not perfection, because no one is perfect, and you can still have a very healthy baby in a healthy pregnancy without perfect blood sugars.
That is so important. That narrative of hope and that you can do it is so important, because I feel like out there, there's a lot that says, it's fear-based, like you were talking about before, just don't do it because it's too scary. And it's so great, at least, to hear the opposite, that you can do it, you should do it, and here's how. That's fantastic. So thank you so much for sharing your story. If you have any questions on how to get in touch with SDRI, you can email us. The email address is below to get in touch with Dr. Kristen Castorino. We have a lot of studies right now too around type 1 diabetes and pregnancy. So if you are pregnant and type 1, we'd love to hear from you. And then Elise, just thanks again for being here. This is great to hear your story.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. And thank you guys for the great work that you do. I really, my husband and I joked with both pregnancies that we need to name the baby Kristen, because it's been so amazing to have such cutting edge and compassionate support.
Sure, that's great. Thank you. Thanks for watching.